So we were really fortunate to work with the Maryland state legislation in the last couple of years to move forward some legislation to mandate emergency action plans, or EAPs, at the high school and middle school level. Where we haven't gotten is camps, recs, rec sports, all those things that are still out there. So those are a piece where we need your eyes again, right? To ask, what's going on when we show up at a clinic, or show up at a camp, or a recruiting situation, or whatever that is. AAU, where is the AED? What's going on? So we'll talk to you about emergency action plans and things that you want to look for in those, and what should be part of those things you have. Again, it's a game plan, right? What do you guys? We'll talk football because that's what we're doing here today, right? What do you tell your kids about football, right? You got to go out, you got to practice hard, you got to drill it over and over and over again. It's not good enough to run that play one time, right? So same thing. About an emergency action plan. It has to be practiced, it has to be drilled, we have to go through those things and have that plan in place. It can't just be call 911, right? That's going to be a piece of it, but we want 911 to, when they show up, what happens in that intermediate time? How's that athlete taken care of? How's that player taken care of in the meantime before the ambulance arrives? So emergency action plans, the pieces of that should be in place. What we want to make sure is that EAP is venue specific. So what does that mean? That means that this situation right here, the emergency action plan for this clinic is different than the basketball court, right? We don't just have one plan that's going to fit for every situation. We want to make sure that it is venue specific to the site that we're at, and we understand where we're going. So that means the address of that venue needs to be on that plan that you have. It needs to be in front of you, so that when I'm calling 911, I have something to rely off of, I can read off of, and I don't want to just fall back and go, oh, well, what was it here, that's right, or they changed the street, or what was the address, but it's automatic and it's in front of you. The emergency team, right? So who's going to be on site? Who's going to be on site and who's going to do what? So who's responsible? Where's the chain of command? Right? Who's in charge? Who's going to make that decision? Who's going to start that emergency management? Because no matter where you're at, there's going to be that gap time between when the event starts, when that athlete begins his distress point, and when the ambulance arrives and when they start. So who's going to contact? Who's going to be in command of that emergency management? Who's going to make the contact to EMS or that advanced medical service? Who's going to retrieve the emergency equipment, right? Who's going to go meet EMS on site, right? So in this situation, we want somebody out on the street to flag them down, right? And we're lucky here because we would actually contact, as well as calling 911, we would call campus security. That would get the campus police involved. They know the site and the campus much better than we do. They're going to be able to direct EMS services onto the site much better. So who's going to do that? Who has keys to the gate, right? What happens when that gate's locked and we need to get that ambulance out onto the field to attend to that athlete? And now we have a barrier that's in place, right? So we need to be planning ahead. Who has that key or that door that's locked, right? They're going to come through. Maybe you're on a college campus where you have a swipe access, right? And they can, the student comes through and they swipe in to get into their gym, or they get into the wrestling room, right? Or whatever it is. But EMS doesn't have that, right? So who's going to allow them access into there? Who's going to ride with the athlete if they're transported by EMS? Who's going to contact their parent, guardian? And then how is that emergency communication going to happen, right? So we're very fortunate, right now we have 911, right? We can call 911. But what if my cell phone's dead, right? Where's the nearest landline? Who has a backup cell phone? Who's going to be that secondary access point to get to 911? What if we're a lot of businesses or in a public spaces, you might have to dial 9 to get out of the building before you can even call to an outside source, right? So knowing all those pieces of the puzzle, and that just goes back to that piece of it being venue specific for your emergency action plan. So the other piece, 911, when you call 911 from a cell phone, where does that go to? It depends where you are. So sometimes if you're in the city, it's going to route to the city. If you're outside, so we're down in Laurel, right? It's not going to route to the local EMS. It's going to route to the county dispatch. So we're just adding another layer of distance between that athlete and the advanced care that they need. So we want to minimize that, understand all those pieces of that. What are you going to get when you call? If we call for 911, who's going to show up? The ambulance shows up, right? But typically, depending on what we tell them, that's what we call a BLS, or a basic life support unit, that's going to show up. Which, God love them, and they do an incredible job. But a lot of times, that's a 18-year-old kid that's going to show up that's just driving that rig, and they are transport. Okay, we need to be able to know how to communicate effectively what's happening to that athlete, to that 911 dispatch person, to say, hey, this is an elevated situation. We need an advanced life support system group to come. We need a paramedic on site that can administer medications, that can start an IV, that can do all the things that we want done. So understanding how to communicate with 911 when you call them. Some places have like a blue light. So campuses will have like, you know, like you're going to go up and hit that button and it's going to call them in. So just understanding those options. And then we talked about just nearest landline, right? So where is our backup for cell phone? Emergency access routes, right? So understanding the venue that you're located in, and how is that EMS going to get on site, right? Is there an elevator they have to go down? Is there a better route for them to go around to another spot? Instead of coming to this door, they want to come around to the other door, and that goes back to just understanding the area that you're at, understanding the key access to doors and gates that might be locked. So emergency equipment, what's available, what should we have? So that your EAP plan should be written out. We're going to have the AED for this event is in this corridor at this spot, right? Or the AED for this event we have down in the white tent. We have a red trauma bag down there. The AED is on site, available and ready to be used. So just understanding that. Splints, spine boards. You have a cold tub, right? For cold immersion. So we have a cold immersion tank that's back by the locker room, just around the corner. So we have that. It's already filled up with water. We have ice on the side, ready to be thrown in there should we need that. OSHA, biohazard cleanup, those types of things for blood spills, and to be able to take care of bleeding. EpiPen. Do you have an EpiPen on site for your athletes? Have any allergies to any medications or other allergens that they would have to take care of? Severe weather, right? So what happens when there's lightning? Where are you going to go for a safe refuge for lightning? Understanding that. Map of the venue is great, right? So again, the more information you can have on there, the better, right? If you walk up to a park and you're there, you don't know where you're at, you haven't been there before, you want to have that up and available and posted so that you can see and understand what's going on. So those kind of some of the basic components of the emergency action plan we want to kind of drive home today. Again, but prepared, right? So it has to be done ahead of time. We can't all of a sudden have somebody go down and then start thinking, okay, well, wait a minute, what street are we on? Where are we going to go? Where are we calling? We got to be prepared ahead of time. We want it posted and available for this event. All of our staff, athletic training staff today, has a copy of it on them. And then you got to practice it, right? So we can't just sit back and say, you know, I've done this 100 times and I know what's going to happen. I know how to do this, right? We got to go through and practice it. We want our coaches to be involved with that. We want our sport administrators to be involved with that so that they understand and they've gone through and drilled, right? If you're, every situation is different. I've worked Division I football, we had 12 people on site, right, for one practice, versus a high school that might only have one athletic trainer that's available to be there, if they can even cover that practice that day, right? So those coaches are going to have to be involved. Other people are going to have to be involved with helping and assisting what's going on, okay? So just to kind of recap a little bit of that, what should you see on the field? What are so we talked about the questions you should ask, but when you show up at an event for your child, what should you see, right? You should see the athletic trainer that's there, okay? You should understand and know who that is. You should know that the coaches have communicated with them. You should see an AED on site. You should see water and fluids for them to use to be rehydrated, right? That shouldn't always just be your responsibility. You brought one Gatorade bottle with them, right? Is there a place where they can refill that or they can get extra fluids throughout that practice? Is there an AED there? Is there a cold immersion tub on site? Okay, so those are some of those things. Again, we want you to use your eyes and your ears and listen, but I want you guys to use your voices as well, okay? Ask those questions. It's not easy all the time to go to your coach, right, that has like brought your son in or your daughter in and say, okay, they can be part of this team, and there's a little bit of reservation there, right? Like, oh, they're going to take care of them. Don't be afraid to ask those questions, okay? Don't be afraid to ask the difficult questions. Like I said, you want to have that difficult conversation on your terms ahead of time before you have to have it on somebody else's terms after the fact.
Hey Wes, I got a question. So basically, we at this level, right? You look at this is more of an AAU crowd, right? So it's not as organized as a Division I college campus, so they may not have all the resources that you just mentioned, right? So what's realistic in regards to the AAU space, meaning like, okay, we could be over at this park, this day and we could be over at this part. What's one of the things you would tell parents in regards to you ain't? I can already tell you ain't going. You aren't not sorry, family. Forgive me. You aren't going to have. Matter of fact, you know what? You ain't going to have an AED machine. Bottom line, right? You may have a cold water tub. You may not have a cold water tub. So what's the next modalities in regards to what's something that they can always bring or everybody should always know, especially for this age group?
Great point. I think what's realistic is to have a confident answer with a plan, right? They may not have an AED on site. They probably, like I say, they probably won't. But that person that has organized that event should have taken a step back and said, okay, I know I'm going to run this event. I'm not going to have an AED here, but I have a plan. I know how I'm going to call 911. I know where the local hospital is. I know what the next steps are going to be, so that they've at least thought through to the next step. That should give you some confidence in their response and their ability to handle those types of situations. You're absolutely right. You're not always going to have those things, but it's still, there's no excuse for not having a plan.